Chapter 5. The Art of Unbecoming. As observed by me, Vilis of the Quiet Accord, consciousness is a fragile thing, easily lost and harder to reclaim when 21 souls fight for control of the vessel that contains them. I watched Edrin struggle toward waking, his body twitching with the echoes of other men's deaths, while Mira worked desperately to save Marcus from the Aurelian poison coursing through his veins. They had dragged themselves perhaps half a mile from where the Inquisitors fell, finding shelter in a shallow cave that offered more hope than protection. The boy had been unconscious for 6 hours. In that time, his condition had visibly deteriorated. Frost crept across his skin in patterns that resembled the faces of the dead. Shadows pooled beneath him like blood. And when he spoke, rambling in his delirium, it was with 21 different voices arguing about who deserved to die first. This was the price of refusing divine gifts, but also perhaps the first step towards something unprecedented. Edrin woke to screaming that he slowly realized was his own. Not one scream, but a chorus. 21 voices tearing from his throat in harmonies that human vocal cords shouldn't produce. His back arched, hands clawing at air as the souls fought for dominance with renewed fury. The synchronization they'd achieved during the battle was gone, replaced by chaos that threatened to tear his mind apart. "Hold him!" Mira's voice sharp with urgency. Hands pressed him down. Marcus, despite his own poisoning, lending what strength remained. The other soul-bearer's face was grey with pain, black veins spreading from where the crossbow bolt had struck, but his grip was steady. "Listen to me," Marcus said, his voice cutting through the cacophony. "You're Edrin, son of Brand, bearer of sorrow's edge. Not them. You. Can't—" Edrin's voice fractured mid-word, becoming Ma's professional growl. "Target acquired. Eliminate with—" Then Voss's clipped precision. Standard suppression pattern, maximum efficiency. Then Rawn's bitter laugh. "They all die anyway, might as well." "Focus." Marcus grabbed his face, forced eye contact. "I know what this is. The soul sensed weakness while you were unconscious. They're trying to take control, but they're just echoes. You're the reality." "Too many," Edrin gasped with his own voice. "Can't hold them back. They want to exist, through you. But existence isn't control." Marcus glanced at Mira. "How much longer?" "Almost done." She was mixing something in a cup that smelled of herbs and older things. "The antidote's working, but slowly. The Aurelian make their poisons to be orderly in their destruction." "We don't have time for orderly." Marcus turned back to Edrin. "Listen, I'm going to teach you something. Might save your life. Might damn you faster. But it's better than letting them tear you apart." He grabbed Sorrow's edge from where it lay beside them, pressed the hilt into Edrin's trembling hands. The blade sang its hunger, adding to the chaos. But Marcus held firm. "Don't fight them," he said. "That's your mistake. You're trying to cage 21 wild animals. Instead, give them something to do. A purpose that serves you, not them." "How?" "Ask them a question. Something they all have different answers to. Let them argue with each other instead of you." Edrin's hands clutched the sword, frost spreading where skin met metal. The suggestion seemed insane, but insanity was all he had left. Through gritted teeth, fighting to maintain enough self to form words, he asked, "What is strength?" The effect was immediate. The 21 voices stopped trying to control his body and turned on each other instead. "Strength is discipline and order." Voss, "Strength is surviving when others fall." Ma, "Strength is taking what you need." First bandit, strength is protecting what matters. A soldier who died thinking of family, strength is accepting the void. Harvester, strength is bending without breaking. The dream walker. On and on, each soul defending their interpretation, their philosophy, their final understanding of what mattered. They still screamed, but at each other now, rather than at him. The pressure in his skull shifted from explosive to merely agonizing. Better? Marcus asked. Different? Edrin managed to sit up, still gripping the sword. They're distracted, still there but not trying to drive. Good. That's lesson 1. You're the moderator, not a participant. Let them debate while you decide what actually needs doing. He accepted the cup from Mira, drank deeply despite the way it made him convulse. Gods, that's vile. Chaos introduced to order usually is. Mira studied them both with those 2 knowing eyes. We can't stay here. The Inquisitors will have sent word. More will come. Let them come. Edrin stood carefully, the voices still arguing philosophy in his head. I'm tired of running. You're in no condition to fight. That synchronization during the battle, that was miracle or fluke. You can't count on it happening again. Then I need to learn control, real control, not just managing the chaos. He looked at Marcus. You said lesson 1. What's lesson 2? Marcus laughed, though it came out pained. Lesson 2 usually comes after weeks of practice with lesson 1, but since we're on an accelerated schedule, lesson 2 is making them work together without losing yourself in the process. Teach me. Here? Now? While poisoned and hunted? When else? Every hour I get weaker. Every day brings me closer to breaking. Edrin gestured at the cave mouth where afternoon light was fading. We have maybe a day before they find us. Either I learn control in that time, or you take the armor. Mira said what they were all thinking. It's still there, waiting. Nethrix isn't subtle about his gifts. I won't take it. You will. Marcus struggled to his feet, the poison fighting against the antidote in ways that made his movements jerky. We all break eventually. The question is what shape we choose for our breaking. He drew grief's echo, the blade weeping its endless tears. But maybe we can delay yours a little longer. Come on, if we're doing this, we do it properly. They emerged from the cave into a small clearing. The forest around them was quiet, too quiet. The war had driven away most wildlife, leaving only the trees to witness what came next. First, Marcus said, stop thinking of them as invaders. They're part of you now, like it or not. 21 new limbs you never asked for, but have to learn to use. That's horrifying. That's honest. The sword promises power through consumption, but it doesn't mention you become what you consume. He moved through a basic form, each motion careful despite the poison. Watch, I carry 43 sorrows, but I move as one. Not because I've caged them, but because I've accepted them. They flow through me, not over me. But they're drowning you. Yes, but I choose the depth. Some days I wade in shallows, others I dive deep, but always I choose. He lowered his blade. Your turn. Show me a basic form, but this time invite one soul to help. Just one. Pick the calmest. Edrin considered the arguing voices. The harvester souls were orderly but alien. The bandits were chaotic and selfish. The soldiers, Voss. For all his rigid fear, Voss had been disciplined, controlled. Voss, he thought, show me precision. The response was immediate. His body shifted, stance correcting to textbook perfection. When he moved through the form, Each angle was exact, each transition flawless. But it was still his body, his choice to move. Voss provided knowledge, not control. Better, Marcus approved. Now add another. Someone whose style complements, not conflicts. This was harder. The souls sensed opportunity and all wanted to be chosen. But Edrin held firm, selecting one of the harvesters. Their efficient brutality might balance Voss's rigid formality. The combination was jarring at first. Two different philosophies of combat trying to exist in the same motion. But slowly, points of overlap emerged. Both valued efficiency. Both understood that survival required adaptation. The form became something new. Not Voss's, not the harvester's, but Edrin's interpretation of both. Excellent. You're learning faster than... Marcus collapsed mid-sentence, body convulsing as the poison found new pathways despite the antidote. Black veins spread across his skin like a map of dying rivers. The Aurelian knew he'd been touched by sorrow, Mira said, already at his side. They crafted the poison specifically for him. It's fighting the cure because it recognizes his weapon's signature. Can you save him? Maybe, but I need supplies I don't have, herbs that grow near battlefields, water that's tasted death. She looked up at Edrin. There's a place, not far, where the war passed through last week, but I'll go. You can barely stand. The souls are arguing about the nature of strength. They'll keep. He sheathed sorrow's edge with movements that felt more controlled than before. Tell me what you need. She listed plants with names that sounded like poetry and poison, described where they'd grow in the wake of violence, drew him a map in the dirt that looked more like a prayer than directions. Be careful, she said. War zones attract more than herbs. Scavengers, deserters, worse things. And if the souls overwhelm you while you're alone, they won't. He said it with more confidence than he felt. Marcus showed me something. They're not enemies to be defeated. They're resources, tools. I just need to learn to use them without losing myself. Philosophy's wonderful until reality tests it. Then let's see which breaks first. The battlefield was 3 miles north, though it felt longer with 21 voices commenting on everything from his walking pace to the weather. Edrin had asked them a new question. What is survival? And they'd been debating vigorously ever since. The forest thinned as he approached, trees giving way to stumps and scorched earth. The smell hit first, death and burning, sweet rot and bitter char. Then the sight, bodies scattered like dolls, some in Silvershore white, others in Dragon's Bend grey. The battle had been recent enough that not all the dead had been collected or looted. Edrin saw the scavengers before they saw him. 3 figures moving among the corpses, collecting weapons, coins, whatever the dead no longer needed. They moved with the casual efficiency of those who'd done this before. He could go around, should go around. He was here for herbs, not confrontation. But one of the scavengers was a child, maybe 12, thin as winter, eyes too old for her face. She worked alongside the adults with the same mechanical movements, stripping boots from a soldier who might have been sleeping if not for the spear through his chest. Not your problem, several souls advised. Everything's connected, others argued. Save your strength for what matters, the pragmatists insisted. She matters, the few with conscience whispered. Edrin sighed. Even internal democracy was exhausting. He stepped from cover, making noise deliberately so they'd hear him coming. The scavengers spun, weapons appearing with the speed of those who lived on edges. "Easy," Edrin called. "Just passing through?" "No one just passes through battlefields," the eldest scavenger said, a woman scarred and wary. "You're either here for the same reason we are, or you're trouble." "I'm here for plants, wolfsbane and mercyleaf. They grow where blood's been spilled." "Herbalist?" She relaxed fractionally. "Bit young for that trade, and that sword says different." "The sword says a lot of things. I try not to listen." He kept his hands visible but ready. "I'll stay out of your way. You stay out of mine. Everyone goes home." "Home." The woman laughed bitterly. "Boy, the war ate our homes week before last. This is what we do now. This is how we eat." She gestured at the child. "How she eats, unless you're hiring." "I don't have coin." "Didn't think so. Move along then. Herbs are that way." She pointed toward a cluster of bodies near a burned wagon. "Though you'll want to be quick. Sun's setting, and the dead don't always stay quiet after dark here." Edrin nodded, started to move, then paused. The child. "She doesn't have to do this." "No? What else should she do? Beg? Starve? Sell herself?" The woman's hand moved to her weapon. "Don't judge what you don't understand, boy." "Kill them," some soul suggested. "Take what they have. Help them," others countered. "Show mercy. Walk away," the survivors insisted. "Not every problem is yours to solve." "What is purpose?" Edrin asked aloud, startling everyone, including himself. The scavengers stared. The woman's hand tightened on her blade. "What?" "Sorry," thinking out loud. But the souls had latched on to the new question, abandoning their previous arguments to debate this one instead. The pressure in his head shifted, became almost manageable. There's a monastery, 2 days south. They take in war orphans, no questions asked. "We're not orphans, we're survivors." "Same thing, different words." He pulled off his pack, removed half their remaining food. Not much, but something. "For the road, if you decide to go." The woman studied him with eyes that had seen too much. "Why?" "Because someone has to make choices that aren't about survival. Otherwise we're all just scavengers." He set the food on a relatively clean stone. "Take it or don't. But maybe consider that she deserves better than learning to strip the dead." He walked away before they could respond, heading toward where the herbs should grow. Behind him, he heard low argument, then footsteps heading south. Maybe they'd go to the monastery, maybe not. But at least they had the option now. The herbs were where Mira said they'd be, growing in soil made rich by violence. Wolfsbane with its purple promises of poison or cure. Mercy leaf that could ease pain or end it, depending on preparation. He gathered what was needed, trying to ignore the bodies around him. One corpse caught his attention. A soldier, but wearing neither kingdom's colours. Black armour that seemed to drink the dying light. Symbols that hurt to look at directly. Void Watcher. One of the harvester's kind. Which meant the attack came from shadow, blade darker than night sweeping toward his neck. Edrin moved without thinking, multiple soul's instincts blending into action. Duck, roll, draw, parry. Sorrow's edge met its twin in darkness, sparking with opposed hungers. Another harvester, this one very much alive. "Soul-bearer," it said, voice like grinding stone. "The Void Watchers remember you. You killed our cell, absorbed our brothers. That demands answer." It was self-defense. Irrelevant. You carry what belongs to the Void. Return it. Can't. Don't know how. Then die, and let death sort the ownership. They fought as the sun died, two bearers of impossible weapons dancing among the dead. Where sorrow's edge was hunger given form, the harvester's blade was emptiness made sharp. Each clash threatened to unmake reality at the point of contact. The 21 voices stopped debating philosophy and started screaming advice. Left, parry left. No, dodge right, strike low. Shadow step behind him. Time dilation, slow his attacks. Just kill him and take his soul. Too many options, too many viewpoints. Edrin felt himself fragmenting, trying to follow all advice simultaneously. His movements became erratic, conflicted, openings appearing where none should be. The harvester's blade found his shoulder, parting flesh with the cold of absolute zero. Not a killing blow, but debilitating. Blood that looked black in the dying light. Weak, the harvester observed. Too many voices, no unity. You'll be a mercy to end. What is victory? Edrin thought desperately, hoping to distract the souls. But instead of arguing, they answered as one. Survival. The synchronization was different from before, not the desperate harmony of the Inquisitor battle, but conscious cooperation. 21 different definitions of survival flowing together into unified purpose. Time slowed, not from the blade's power, but from perfect clarity. Edrin saw every angle, every option, every path to victory, and more. He saw which ones let both of them live. He moved with precision that belonged to Voss, brutality that came from the harvesters, fluidity gifted by the dreamwalker. But the choice of how to blend them, the decision to disable rather than kill, that was purely Edrin. The harvester's blade arm separated at the elbow, severed by dimensional shearing where shadow met time distortion. The void-touched warrior stared at the stump, then at Edrin, confusion replacing certainty. Why? It asked. You could have killed, should have killed. The void demands. The void can demand all it wants. I choose differently. Edrin kicked the severed arm away, keeping the blade from its owner's reach. Leave. Tell your kind that the souls I carry are mine now. Not trophies, not theft. Integration. You're mad. Probably, but I'm also done being everyone's weapon. He gestured at the battlefield. Look around. This is where following divine mandates leads. Maybe madness is sanity when the sane world looks like this. The harvester retreated, cradling its stump, promising return with greater numbers. Edrin let it go. Exhaustion hitting as the soul's cooperation fragmented back into argument. But something had changed. They'd worked together by choice, not desperation. Brief as it was, it proved possibility. He gathered the herbs and started back, shoulder burning where void-touched steel had marked him. The scavengers were gone, their footprints heading south. Small victory, perhaps meaningless in the larger scope. But his choice, his victory. 21 souls had helped him achieve it, but the decision had been his alone. Maybe that was the key. Not controlling them or being controlled by them, but finding the space between where choice still existed. Time would tell if it would be enough. Full dark had claimed the forest by the time Edrin returned to the cave. He was weaving on his feet, blood loss and soul management taking their toll. The herbs clutched in his good hand looked wilted. But Mira had said life was less important than essence. He almost missed the warning signs, almost walked directly into disaster. But Mars' paranoia saved him. A voice among 21 suddenly screaming about ambush patterns. Edrin froze at the cave mouth, senses extending beyond the physical. Footprints that didn't belong. the lingering scent of armor oil, the particular silence that came from people holding their breath. More inquisitors. They'd found the cave. Edrin circled wide, moving through shadow with skills borrowed from 3 different souls. The main force was inside. He could hear low voices, the clink of blessed steel. But they'd have left sentries. They always did. There, 2 grey-cloaked figures flanking the cave mouth, hidden in brush. Professional placement, good sight lines. They'd spot anyone approaching the obvious way, which is why Edrin came from above. Shadow-stepping to a tree branch, he studied the situation. 6 inquisitors total, the 2 outside, 4 voices within. They had Marcus and Mira, but hadn't killed them yet. Interrogation first, execution after. Standard Aurelion procedure. Take them all, the violent souls urged. Quick and quiet. Save your friends, the protective ones insisted. Nothing else matters. Run, the survivors counselled. Live to fight another day. What is necessity? Edrin asked softly. The debate that erupted bought him thinking time. He couldn't take 6 inquisitors in his current state. Even with soul synchronization, blood loss and exhaustion made victory uncertain. But he didn't need to fight them all, just distract them. He pulled out the wolfsbane, crushed it between palms that knew herbcraft from absorbed memories. The purple juice mixed with his blood, creating something neither poison nor medicine, but possibility. One of the bandits had known the trick, not deadly but disorienting, made reality negotiable for those who breathed its fumes. The wind was right, blowing from him toward the cave. Edrin lit the mixture with flint and steel, watching purple smoke rise and drift. It moved like a living thing, seeking warmth, finding the cave mouth and flowing inside. Shouts of alarm. The 2 sentries spun inward, trying to see the threat. One stumbled, the wolfsbane already affecting her perceptions. The other reached for a horn to call warning. Edrin dropped on him from above, sorrow's edge pommel striking precisely, unconscious, not dead. The soul screamed at the waist, but he was learning to ignore their bloodthirstier suggestions. The first sentry was on her knees, batting at purple butterflies only she could see. Edrin put her under gently, then moved to the cave mouth. Chaos inside. The 4 inquisitors stumbled in smoke that showed them their fears. One swung at shadows. Another had backed against a wall, eyes wide with visions. The leader, the same seeker Pravus from before, fought the hallucinations with pure will. Mira lay bound near the back, seemingly unconscious, but Edrin caught the glint of her eyes in the purple light, playing dead. Smart. Marcus was less fortunate. They'd strung him up, the poison and interrogation leaving him barely conscious. But he was breathing, still alive. Show yourself, Pravus commanded, blade sweeping through smoke that laughed at steel. Face judgment properly. Edrin stepped through the purple haze, letting them see him, blood on his shoulder, exhaustion in every line, but upright, armed, unbroken. Let them go, he said simply. You attack servants of order with poison smoke, with cowards' tactics. I defend my friends with whatever works. He kept Sorrow's edge low but ready. This doesn't have to end in blood. Take your people and leave. You know we can't do that. Pravus fought through the visions. Professionalism overcoming fear. You're an anomaly, a threat to balance. The Accord demands. The Accord demands nothing. People demand. Gods demand. The Accord is just the excuse you use. The smoke was thinning, its power spent. Soon the other Inquisitors would recover. Last chance. Leave. Or what? You'll kill us all? Add our souls to your collection?" She laughed bitterly. "You're trying so hard to not be a monster, but that blade makes monsters of everyone who carries it. No, people make monsters. The blade just reveals what was already there." He gestured at Marcus. "Cut him down, take your people, report whatever you need to report, but do it somewhere else." Something in his tone must have reached her, or maybe she saw what the smoke showed. Not fear, but possibility. A future where rigid order bent enough to accommodate mercy. "This is a mistake," she said, but she was already gesturing to her recovering troops. "The Accord will send others, less flexible ones. Let them come. Maybe by then I'll have figured out what I'm supposed to be." They cut Marcus down with careful hands, professional even in retreat. Pravus paused at the cave mouth, studying him with those winter eyes. "The armor is still there," she said, waiting. "Every day you refuse it, you grow weaker. Eventually, choice becomes illusion. Everything's illusion, but we choose which ones to believe." She left without another word, collecting her sentries and vanishing into the forest with the efficiency of those who'd failed but lived to try again. Mira sat up the moment they were gone, working at her bonds with hidden blade. Wolfsbane smoke, creative, also incredibly dangerous. You could have poisoned us all. I diluted it. One of the absorbed souls knew the ratios. He cut her free, then moved to Marcus. The other bearer looked terrible. Black veins had spread despite the antidote, and his breathing came shallow. Will he survive? With the herbs, maybe. Without them, definitely not. She was already preparing, hands moving with practiced efficiency. "You're injured." "I'm fine." "You're lying, but we'll deal with that after." She looked at him with those knowing eyes. "You let them go. Again. That's becoming a pattern." "Better than the alternative pattern." "Is it? Mercy feels noble until it comes back armed with friends." But she was smiling slightly. "Help me with this. He needs the preparation immediately, or the poison wins." They worked together, following her instructions to create something that smelled like death, but promised life. Marcus convulsed when they forced it between his lips, body fighting even as it healed. "There," Mira said finally. "He'll live. Probably. The sorrows make everything complicated. His soul can't decide if survival is worth the pain." "I know the feeling." She turned to his shoulder then, cleaning and binding with supplies that seemed to multiply in her pack. The void blade? Harvester. Same ones from before. They want their absorbed brothers back. Of course they do. Everyone wants something from you. She tied off the bandage with more force than necessary. "The question is what you want. To survive long enough to claim my father's hammer, to find the third option Caleb mentioned, to stop being everyone's weapon or saviour or symbol." He laughed, though it hurt. "To have one day when no one tries to kill me." Ambitious goals, especially the last one. She sat back, exhaustion showing. "We can't stay here. They'll return, or others will come. We need somewhere defensive, somewhere to buy time." "Any suggestions?" "One, but you won't like it." She pulled out a map that showed more than geography. "There's a place, Korthak's throne. Old fortress from the First Divine War. Abandoned for centuries because, well, because of what lives there." "What lives there?" "Things that didn't choose sides. Creatures that exist between divine mandates. They don't like visitors, but they hate divine servants more." She traced a path with one finger. 3 days' travel. Marcus should be stable enough to move by dawn. "And once we're there?" "We train, We prepare. We figure out how to keep you sane without accepting Nethrix's collar. She met his eyes. Or we fail, and you take the armour anyway, but at least we'll have tried. Edrin nodded, fatigue pulling at him. The 21 souls had gone quiet, worn out by the evening's exertions. Tomorrow would bring new arguments, new challenges, new attempts on their lives. But tonight, they were alive, wounded, hunted, breaking slowly, but alive. It would have to be enough. The training began in earnest the next morning, though training suggested more structure than what actually transpired. I watched from the tree line as Marcus demonstrated what he called controlled compartmentalization, a technique that sounded academic until you witnessed it in practice. He sat cross-legged in the clearing, grief's echo laid across his knees, and spoke aloud to the sorrows he carried. "The mother who lost her child to fever," he said, his voice distant. "Show me that grief." The sword pulsed once, and Marcus's face contorted with anguish so profound that even I, immortal and long hardened to mortal suffering, felt the echo of it. He held the emotion for a count of 10, then exhaled slowly. "Thank you. Rest now." The grief receded like a wave pulling back from shore. Marcus's face cleared, though tears still tracked down his cheeks. "Your turn," he told Edrin. Edrin sat across from him, sorrow's edge planted point first in the earth between them. The blade's red gem pulsed with what I had learned to recognize as hunger mixed with curiosity. It was learning to be patient, or at least to pretend patience while planning longer manipulations. "I don't want to—" "That's the point," Marcus interrupted. "You've been trying not to feel them, not to hear them. That's like trying not to feel pain when you're wounded. The pain exists, whether you acknowledge it or not. Better to acknowledge it, understand it, and decide how to respond." Edrin closed his eyes. The 21 voices that had been a constant screaming chaos had quieted over the past day to something more like a contentious meeting. Everyone talking at once, but at least talking rather than shrieking. "Rawn," Edrin said, naming the first soldier who had died. "Show me who you were." The response was immediate and brutal. Memories flooded through Edrin's mind. Not his own, but experienced with the force of lived truth. A childhood in Dragon's Bend's lower districts, the smell of river rot and cheap beer. Hands that learned early to take what they needed because asking meant weakness. The satisfaction of intimidation, the rush of violence, the way power felt when you had nothing else. Edrin's hands clenched into fists. His lips pulled back from his teeth in an expression I'd seen on Rawn's face 100 times. Aggressive, predatory, looking for the weakness in everything around him. "Breathe," Marcus said calmly. "You're not Rawn, you're Edrin, experiencing Rawn's memories. There's a difference." "Doesn't feel like a difference," Edrin growled, still using Rawn's voice, his inflection. "I know, but it is. Your core remains. Bran's son. The boy who made things, not the man who broke them." Edrin shuddered, fighting for control, slowly, so slowly I could mark each second of the struggle. His expression shifted. The predatory cast faded, his hands unclenched. His voice, when he spoke again, was his own. "He wasn't all bad," Edrin said quietly. "There's a memory here of him teaching a younger soldier how to tie proper knots, being patient about it, almost kind." "Most people aren't all anything," Marcus agreed. "The souls you carry were people. Flawed, broken, sometimes monstrous, but people. If you treat them only as burdens to be suppressed, you'll never find peace with them. But if you can see them as they were, understand them, then what? They're still dead. I still killed them. Then you carry them with purpose, instead of just weight. Marcus touched grief's echo's hilt, his expression distant. Every sorrow I hold taught me something about what people value, what they fear losing. It doesn't make the grief lighter, but it makes it meaningful, not just noise. From her position near the cave entrance, Mira called out, "Philosophical lessons are touching, but can we talk about practical applications? In case you've forgotten, we're hunted by forces that won't care how meaningfully Edrin carries his burden." "I haven't forgotten," Marcus said, "but philosophy becomes practical when you're fighting with a mind full of other people's combat instincts. Edrin, stand up. Draw your blade." Edrin obeyed, though I saw the hesitation. Each time he touched sorrow's edge now, there was a moment of negotiation. The blade wanted control. Edrin wanted to maintain himself. The fact that negotiation happened at all was progress. "Fight me," Marcus said, drawing grief's echo. "But this time don't just react. Choose which skills to use. Call on Ma for technique, Voss for aggression, but filter it through your own intent." They began slowly. Marcus was still weak from the poison, and Edrin was learning to move under the weight of 21 different fighting styles, all suggesting different approaches. But as they circled each other, something changed. Edrin's stance shifted, became more professional. Ma's influence certainly. The soldier had been trained by Dragonsben's military academy. But the way Edrin held the blade, the small adjustments he made to account for sorrow's edge's unnatural balance, those were his own refinements. "Good," Marcus said. "Now—" He lunged without warning, a strike that would have taken Edrin's throat had it connected. But Edrin wasn't there. He'd moved with Tarek Voss's opportunistic speed, but in a direction Brand had taught him. The blacksmith's instinct for understanding angles and leverage. The counterstrike came from 3 sources at once: Rawn's brutality, Edrin's determination, and something new. A precision that suggested the souls were beginning to coordinate rather than just compete. Marcus barely parried, his eyes widening with surprise and something that might have been pride. "You're learning faster than I did," he admitted, stepping back and lowering his blade. "It took me months to start filtering the sorrows. You're doing it in days. Maybe I'm just more desperate." Desperation helps, but this is more than that. Marcus studied him with the intensity of someone who recognized a mirror but couldn't quite believe the reflection. "You're not trying to use them or suppress them. You're trying to understand them. That's rare." "Is it enough? To survive? Probably not. To stay sane? Maybe." Marcus sheathed his blade. "But combined with whatever your father's hammer becomes, with Mira's knowledge, with what we'll learn at Korthak's throne, you might forge something unprecedented. Or I might break completely and take the armor." "That too," Marcus agreed with grim honesty. "But you haven't broken yet. That counts for something." They trained for 3 more days before attempting the journey. 3 days of Edrin learning to call upon specific souls for specific skills. Of Marcus teaching the terrible art of carrying other people's pain without drowning in it. Of Mira drilling them both on the meditation techniques she'd learned as a truth seeker, the ones designed to preserve identity against divine influence. I reported each development to the quiet accord, watching their concern grow. An unaligned soul-bearer who could master his burden without divine assistance represented a variable they had not planned for. Valorin herself reviewed my observations, her luminous face troubled. The boy refuses every easy path, she noted. Admirable, but sustainable. The soulbinder will not simply abandon his investment. Nethrix grows more subtle, I confirmed. He no longer offers power directly. Now he manufactures situations where power becomes necessary. And the other one? The sorrow bearer? Marcus Fellblade, also refusing divine bargains, teaching Edrin his methods. Two anomalies travelling together. Either they will forge something new or they will shatter spectacularly. She was silent for a moment. The hammer, how much longer? 5 weeks, perhaps less? Calum works quickly when moved by purpose. Let us hope they survive that long. Continue your observation, Valis, and if direct intervention becomes necessary. I will break the Accord's restrictions, I finished. Yes, Luminary, I know. She had not reprimanded me for the line I'd already crossed. Commissioning the hammer was intervention, however subtle. But we both knew that if Edrin fell to Nethrix before the hammer's completion, all our careful planning would mean nothing. The boy had to survive. More than that, he had to remain himself. It was a terrible thing to hope for, in a world designed to break the hopeful. On the 4th morning, they packed what little they owned and prepared for the journey to Korthak's throne. Marcus could walk now without swaying, though the black veins from the Aurelion poison still traced patterns up his neck. Mira assured him they would fade in time. But time was a resource none of them could afford. The Accord knew their location. Nethrix's forces tracked them. And somewhere in the political machinations of Silvershore and Dragon's Bend, the war that served as backdrop to divine scheming continued to escalate. 3 days' travel if we're not attacked, Mira said, studying the map that showed more than geography. 4 if we are, 6 if Marcus collapses again. I won't collapse, Marcus said, with the stubbornness of someone who absolutely might collapse. Famous last words, Edrin muttered, but he positioned himself to support the older bearer if needed. The 21 souls had their own opinions about the journey. Some, the soldiers primarily, were familiar with forced marches and difficult terrain. Others, the more recent additions, like the Harvester entities, understood pursuit and evasion from different perspectives. Together they formed a chaotic chorus of advice that Edrin was learning to filter. Take the high road, Mar suggested. Better vantage points. Low road, Voss countered. Faster, more cover. Neither, the Dreamwalker's fluid consciousness offered. Move between. Shadows will hide us. Edrin? Mira asked, watching him with concern. You're doing that thing again where you argue with yourself. I'm not arguing with myself. I'm arbitrating a debate between 21 different tactical philosophies. He shook his head, making a decision that was somehow both his own and synthesized from the collective. We take the valley route, harder terrain, but fewer chances of being spotted from a distance. The souls told you that? The souls suggested 16 different options. I picked the one that made sense. Progress, Marcus said approvingly. A week ago, they were just noise. Now they're useful noise. Still noise, Edrin said, but he was smiling slightly. The expression looked strange on his face. He smiled so rarely now that when he did, it carried the weight of small victory. They set out as the sun cleared the horizon, leaving behind the cave that had sheltered them and the clearing where Edrin had begun to understand what it meant to carry the dead without being consumed by them. The first day of travel was uneventful, almost suspiciously so. They followed a narrow valley between 2 ridgelines, keeping to the shadows where possible. Marcus held his own, though I could see the effort it cost him. Edrin walked with the careful awareness of someone listening to multiple sources of input, his hand never far from sorrow's edge's hilt, and Mira. Mira walked like someone approaching a destination they'd hoped never to see again. "You know this place," Edrin observed as they made camp that evening. "Codex throne." "I know of it," Mira corrected, building their fire with the efficiency of long practice. "Never been there personally, but during my time with the Truth Seekers, we studied it. Studied what lived there. And what does live there." Mira was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. Things that saw the First Divine War and decided both sides were wrong. Entities that refused to choose Aurelion or Varkul and paid the price for neutrality. The war destroyed the fortress, but the residents remained, watching, waiting. For what? No one knows. Maybe for the next war. Maybe for the moment when the choice they refused becomes unavoidable. She looked up, meeting Edrin's eyes. Maybe for someone like you, unaligned, carrying pieces of both order and chaos, trying to forge a third path. "That's encouraging," Marcus said dryly, from where he lay wrapped in blankets, still fighting the poison's lingering effects. "We're walking into a fortress of bitter neutrals who might decide we're proof that choosing sides is inevitable." "Or they might teach you something," Mira countered. "Neutrality isn't the same as passivity. They've survived 2 divine wars while maintaining their independence. That's an achievement worth learning from." Survived or just been ignored because they're not important enough to destroy? Does it matter? They're still there, still free, still themselves. She prodded the fire, sending sparks spiraling into the dark. "That's more than most can say." Edrin absorbed this, the 21 souls offering their own interpretations. The soldier souls saw tactical advantage in studying neutrality's methods. The harvester entities recognized kindred spirits in beings that existed between mandates. The Dreamwalker's consciousness appreciated the concept of refusing binary choices. And Edrin himself, he saw hope, distant, uncertain, but hope nonetheless. "How much farther?" he asked. "Tomorrow we reach the Ashen Border, the region where normal geography gives way to something stranger. After that, another day to the throne itself." Mira's expression darkened. "The closer we get, the more we'll feel the weight of divine attention. That place is a wound in reality, scabbed over but never healed. Every god and entity who remembers the First War will sense our approach." "So we'll have company?" "Almost certainly. The question is whether they'll attack directly or just watch to see what we do." "I'm getting tired of being everyone's interesting anomaly," Edrin said. "Then you should have died when your family did and stayed dead," Marcus said bluntly. "The moment Nethrix brought you back, you became significant. The moment you refused his gifts, you became dangerous. Now you're both. There's no walking away from that." "I know," Edrin said quietly. "Doesn't mean I have to like it." "No one said you had to like it. Just survive it long enough to matter." They settled into watchful silence as night deepened around them. I kept my own vigil from the darkness beyond firelight, noting the way shadows moved with too much purpose, the way the stars seemed to watch with divine attention. The boy was right to be tired of significance, but significance once gained was not easily shed. And what approached at Codex throne would test whether his newfound control was genuine progress or merely the calm before a catastrophic breaking. The second day brought their first encounter with something actively hostile. They were following a dry riverbed when Sorrow's edge began to pulse with warning. Edrin stopped immediately, hand on hilt. The 21 souls suddenly united in their alarm. "Something's hunting us," he said. Something's always hunting us, Marcus muttered, but he drew grief's echo, his movement still too slow from the poison. The attack came from above, a diving strike that would have taken Edrin's head if Tarek Voss's opportunistic instincts hadn't screamed warning. He dropped and rolled, coming up with blade drawn, and got his first clear look at their attacker. It was vaguely humanoid, but its proportions were wrong. Arms too long, fingers that ended in obsidian talons, a face that seemed to shift between forms as though it couldn't decide which shape best expressed its hunger. The divine corruption was obvious. This had been mortal once, before Varkul influence reshaped it into something else. A Wendigo, the soldier souls identified with grim recognition. Transformation through cannibalism and divine taint. But the thing moved with purpose beyond mere hunger. Someone had sent it. Edrin didn't wait for it to strike again. He moved with the coordinated precision he'd been practicing. Mars' technique, Voss's aggression, Rawn's brutal efficiency, all filtered through his own desperate will to survive. Sorrow's edge sang through the air, meeting obsidian claws with a shriek of opposing forces. The Wendigo was strong, fast, driven by corruption and purpose. But Edrin was learning to be something unprecedented, a weapon that thought, that chose, that fought with the skills of 21 warriors working in concert. The blade bit deep into the creature's shoulder, the soul hunger activated immediately, beginning the terrible process of consumption. But this time, Edrin was ready for it. He'd practiced this with Marcus over the past days, learning to direct the absorption rather than simply endure it. The Wendigo's essence began to flow into the blade, and Edrin consciously partitioned it, assigning the memory fragments to different spaces in his crowded mind rather than letting them flood through him chaotically. This one goes with the harvester memories, he decided with grim precision. Varkul corruption, similar pattern. The 21 souls, who had their own opinions about being joined by a 22nd, nevertheless cooperated in creating space for the new arrival. It was not acceptance exactly. More like a crowded tavern, making room for one more patron, grudgingly, but with understanding that they were all trapped in the same establishment. The absorption completed in seconds. The Wendigo collapsed into ash that the wind scattered. And Edrin remained standing himself, though now carrying 22 distinct consciousnesses instead of 21. "You're getting better at that," Mira observed, though her expression was troubled. "Almost too good." Is there such a thing as being too good at not losing your mind? When it means you're learning to consume souls as easily as the sword does? Yes. Be careful, Edrin. The line between mastering a tool and becoming it is thinner than you think. He wanted to argue, but the Wendigo's memories were already integrating. Hunger, corruption, the joy of transformation, but also, buried deep, the memory of the human it had been. A scout from Dragon's Bend. A woman named Kessa, who'd been captured, broken, reshaped into a weapon by someone who understood exactly how to corrupt mortal flesh. Nethric sent it, Edrin said quietly. Not directly. Through intermediaries. Through the same forces that corrupted Kessa before she became this thing. A test, Marcus said, to see if you'd absorb it, to see if you're learning the lessons he wants you to learn. Which are? That efficiency matters more than morality, that purpose justifies method, that becoming a better weapon is more important than remaining human. Marcus's expression was grim. I've seen this pattern before. Gods don't just want servants. They want servants who chose servitude, who convinced themselves it was wisdom. I know. But every time you get better at using the souls, every time you integrate them more smoothly, you prove you're learning what soul bearers are supposed to learn. The question is whether you're learning it for your purposes or his. Edrin looked down at sorrow's edge, which pulsed with something that might have been satisfaction. The blade had consumed another soul, grown marginally stronger, proven its worth to its wielder, and Edrin had used it with increasing skill, integrated the spoils with alarming efficiency. Were they serving each other's purposes, or was one of them slowly winning a war the other didn't fully recognize was being fought? We keep moving, Mira decided, breaking the spiral of doubt before it could deepen. Whatever Nethrix intended with that attack, standing here contemplating it serves his interests more than ours. They pressed on, but the encounter had changed something. Edrin walked with new wariness, hyper-aware of how smoothly he'd absorbed Kessa's corrupted essence, how little resistance the integration had met. The 22 souls were quieter now. Not peaceful, that would never happen, but organized, structured, almost orderly. It should have felt like progress. Instead, it felt like approaching a cliff edge in the dark, unsure whether the next step would find solid ground or empty air. They reached the ashen border at midday on the third day. The change was immediate and unsettling. The landscape simply ended. Green grass and living trees gave way to grey wasteland where nothing grew and nothing moved. The sky above looked faded, as though someone had bleached the colour from reality itself. The First War's aftermath, Mira explained, stopping at the invisible line that separated living world from dead. When Aurelion and Varkul forces clashed here, they unmade the very concept of life. The land remembers. It will always remember. Edrin stared at the grey expanse. The 22 souls offered their perspectives. The soldiers remembered stories of such places. The harvester entities recognized the signature of massive reality warping. The Wendigo's corrupted essence felt almost comfortable in the deadened landscape. But Edrin himself felt only sorrow. This had been someone's home once. Fields, forests, villages, all of it erased by forces that barely noticed the mortals caught between them. "We cross here," Marcus said, though he looked as troubled as Edrin felt. "The path to Korthak's throne leads through the ashen border, no way around it." "No," Mira agreed, "and once we cross, we're committed. The entities that live in the throne will know we're coming, will sense what we carry." "Let them sense," Edrin said with more confidence than he felt. "Maybe they'll have answers I haven't found anywhere else. Or maybe they'll kill you for bringing divine attention to their refuge." "That too," he acknowledged. "But standing here debating won't change the outcome. We go forward or we go back. I'd rather go forward." They crossed together, 3 broken people carrying their different burdens, into a landscape that had forgotten how to sustain life. The moment Edrin's foot touched the grey earth, he felt the weight of divine attention settle on him like a physical pressure. Every god and entity that remembered the First War was suddenly aware of his presence. Not just aware, interested. 3 soul-bearers walking into a place that had rejected divine influence. It was provocation and promise in equal measure. "Stay close," Mira warned. "The border isn't just dead, it's hungry. It remembers what it lost and resents what still lives." As if to emphasize her point, the ground beneath them shuddered. Ash rose in swirls that almost looked like reaching hands. The air grew heavy, oppressive, testing them. But Edrin had learned something from carrying 22 consciousnesses. He knew how to be present while holding multiple perspectives. He walked through the hostile landscape with the focus of the living and the patience of the dead. And slowly, grudgingly, the border seemed to accept their passage. By evening, they glimpsed their destination, Codex throne rising from the grey wasteland like a broken crown. The fortress was massive, ancient, and clearly inhabited despite its ruined state. Lights, not fire, but something stranger, flickered in shattered windows. Shadows moved with purpose along crumbled battlements. And from the throne itself, from whatever entities called that place home, Edrin felt recognition. They knew what he was, what he carried, what he represented. The question was whether they would welcome it or destroy it. Tomorrow, Mira said, stopping their advance as darkness fell. We approach in daylight, with courtesy, announcing ourselves as seekers rather than conquerors. And if they don't care about courtesy, Marcus asked, then we hope Edrin's 22 souls and our combined experience are enough to survive the lessons they teach instead. They made camp in the shadow of ancient stones that had witnessed the first divine war. Above them, the throne watched with windows that seemed almost like eyes. Around them, the ashen border whispered with the voices of everything it had lost. And in the morning, they would learn whether neutrality could be learned or whether it could only be endured. I watched from my own shadows, my report to the quiet accord already forming. The boy had survived the journey, had grown stronger, more controlled, more dangerous to divine plans. But Codex throne held lessons that could either forge him into something unprecedented or reveal that his resistance had been merely delayed acceptance. Valorin would want to know which outcome emerged. I was no longer certain I could predict it.
The story continues, as all stories must. Find the next chapter at Codex 11. Subscribe, lest the Forge's call go unheard. The Forge is patient, but it does not wait forever.